you guys doing? Oh, I know. You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Oh,
I'll make sure I word are you done yet?
my brain's not working right now. I'm tired. We're off like 3 hours sleep right now.
Well,
So,
this is the perfect time for you that night, obviously.
all right. So I think you guys just saw drafting Nick Scorton, a guy that we obviously really liked as an edge rusher, and then the same thing with Princely. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because that's a little too complicated for me. But in all seriousness, they're two guys that we think very highly of. They can get to the quarterback. They can play the run, and they can do all the things that we're going to ask them to do. So yeah, we're just super excited, and didn't think we'd be able to get both of them. So to be able to capitalize and trade up and get these guys, we're just super excited about it. So I'll leave it to you guys.
You guys both constantly talk about making the roster uncomfortable and adding new pieces. You guys have spent cash on an edge rusher, and now you've spent 2 premium picks on edge rushers. How should the outside linebacker group, the incumbent group, feel about all these additions?
I mean, I think, we said earlier, the roster, it's all about adding competition, adding depth, and, especially at a position, last year that, it felt like we needed to get a little more pass rush out there. So to be able to add these 2 guys, it's just going to add to the group and the competition and everything that the program's about.
How much of this, too, was about maybe, and Dave, getting Jadeveon off the field a little bit more than all the snaps he played last year?
Yeah, again, I just think it's about the competition out there, keeping guys fresh, having a healthy rotation, not only on the outside but also on the inside. So just our D-line group as a whole, just keeping those guys fresh and be able to play, stay healthy. It's a long season. So to be able to add these 2 guys into that mix, it's going to help everybody out.
Dan, just to be clear, Jadeveon, you do plan on keeping him. What do you say? Move on?
No, we're still working through the roster. We're still talking through things. Obviously, we're focused on the draft right now and what's in front of us.
Dave, both these new edge rushers have pretty different body types. Do you see them as a rotation based on packages, or how did these guys complement each other?
Yeah, there's versatility in there for sure, and I think the cool part about adding Pat Jones is, Pat's shown an ability to rush on the edge. He's also shown an ability to rush inside in different packages, and talking to Ajero, just the different ways in known pass situations that you can kind of mix the bodies up, and it just gives you a lot of versatility with what you can do. And Dan alluded to it too. A long season, all these guys are going to play. They have to play, And so, for us, the goal was to, add more guys to the arsenal to just, get those guys fresh and make sure that when we have those critical downs, end of half, end of games, that we're able to, keep that intensity level up and just keep throwing guys at the offensive line of the pass protection unit and affect the quarterback.
Dan, from the standpoint of scouting a guy who's not going to turn 21 until, August, to get a pass rusher that young that you feel like you can probably develop long term, from the scouting perspective, how intriguing is that?
It is, obviously, still young guys, guys that are still developing, still growing, working on their arsenal, working on their craft, and to get these young guys that are energetic and super motivated to get out there and improve our team and roster, it's exciting.
Dan, you mentioned even a few moments ago, kind of jokingly, that your brain isn't really working right now.
Yeah.
How chaotic did things get in there tonight, even allowing you to get both these guys?
I don't think it was chaotic at all. I think we have a really good process. We have a really good group. The communication's great between all of us, and that's what you want. You don't want to feel like it's chaotic at all in there, and it hasn't felt like that at all throughout the whole draft process. And I think it's a testament to, my staff and Dave's staff and the communication and, just everybody working together towards a common goal.
And you were
in the right word, but how would you describe just the range of emotions, because you mentioned at one point you didn't know if you could get both, so how that played out.
Yeah, I think it's, the one word is just excitement. To be able to go and get your guys and guys that have been watching forever and that you've really grown to enjoy watching, and just kind of see them play. Both these guys are fun to watch. They're great players, and to be able to get them, I mean, we're so excited.
Yeah.
You were a little non-committal on Steve's question about Clowney. Can you expand on kind of what you're going through there with him?
No, I think it's not just him. It's just with the roster, as a whole. We're just kind of working through things. We're working through the draft. We're focused on that, and then we're going to reassess it after the draft and go from there.
And you obviously want to get impact players in the early rounds. Are either of these edge rushers guys or both guys you feel are capable of starting in a rookie year?
Yeah, I think it's up to them. I think they have the ability, but again, everything has to be earned, and as Coach alluded to.
And I think, if Nick and Princely were here talking, they have high aspirations for themselves, but for us to put those types of expectations on them, the goal is for them to first and foremost get in the building, learn what we're doing, learn the calls, the techniques we're asking. There's a discipline that goes with playing this game, and so I don't think they're naive to the fact that there's a lot of hard work in front of them, and that's hopefully what we create. I just want to mention, Brant's not up here with us, but Brant Tillis is, having Brant right here sitting next to Dan, and going through different trade scenarios, and, working with Justin and Eric Eager, and just, running through the simulations and what it would take, and just kind of the speed at which they do that. I mean, I haven't been in a lot of draft rooms for the whole time, but I just know it makes our decisions so much cleaner, where we have the percentages of who's going to be available to hold tight. I'm probably panicking the most, even though it's not really visible. I'm probably panicking the most. I'm like, oh, he's there, he's still there. And they're the ones that have, the grasp of history, the grasp of all the probabilities. And so that part just kind of sets me at ease. Take a deep breath. Okay, let this thing come to us. And running through hundreds of simulations, just kind of using mock simulators and all that, if you were to tell me that we were going to get T-Mac and then Nick Scorton and then Princely, I mean, I didn't get that not once in any of my mocks in the first 3 picks. So I'm just ecstatic right now. I'm really excited about these guys.
And those guys, the edge rushers, among a group that you guys had pinpointed, and that you saw a lot of edge rushers going off in the second round to get to the point that.
I think it just as a whole, it's a good class of outside linebackers / rushers. So. Again, these are guys that, when you watch their tape, the tape is, it stands out. So to be able to get these two guys, just like Dave said, it's really exciting.
And conversely, the inside linebackers and safeties and some of these other positions and corners have kind of dropped in this class. Mm-hmm. How confident do you feel like you can address needs like that on day 3?
Yeah, I think that type of stuff, I think it runs in our favor. Obviously we want to address, not just edge rushers and receiver, but there's other spots that we need to add to, and I think it matches up pretty good with our needs.
Dan Princely talked a lot at the Senior Bowl about wanting to make sure he could get to a double-digit sack season before he left for the NFL, and that he changed a lot about his game to make that happen. As you watched his tape, did you see that progression, and what does that kind of tell you about him? Yeah,
I think he was working on his craft, and, you can tell on tape, he got better and better as a pass rusher in terms of using his hands and kind of, developing a toolbox, and, he bends about as good as, any rusher that I've watched this year. So to get him, the speed that he brings off the edge, his ability to bend, he's got a wicked spin move. He's got a long arm. He can do a lot of cool things. So, I think he's just going to get better and better.
Going into tonight, was that edge position going to be a focal point for you guys?
Yeah, I felt like it was, and it just so happened to match up with our board. And, hey, we had these guys high, and, they were still there. And that's why you saw us go and trade up for them. So, we wanted to capitalize on that.
What about, for either of you, getting both of them out of the SEC and what that meant, if it meant anything? I
mean, it's great. It's great to see them against some NFL competition. I think, all of them getting their shot against Will Campbell certainly matters. You kind of watch them battle against the best, and just watching them do it in different ways too. You got more of a compact build Bull with the spin and the high motor there, and then you got Princely and all the things that Dan talked about. But to see them get to continue to refine their craft against a really high level of competition was really cool for us.
How much did EJ and AC kind of play into today as far as identifying those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's a collaborative effort, between the scouts, the coaches, all of us just communicating and coming up with the guys that fit our scheme and fit our culture. So, we're all working together, and, it worked out good.
He was telling us today about how Bryce lobbied for him. Can you elaborate on what that is like for Bryce to do that? Because he doesn't like a guy that would just walk in and pump his fist or do anything. How would you describe him doing that?
I think a lot of it is just like the communication part, like just talking to Bryce, talking to the players in general, and of course I'm going to take Bryce's recommendation on a guy that he was out there throwing with, and he had intimate knowledge of what he looked like, and of course I'm going to pick his brain and get his thoughts, and Bryce is a big part of this organization, so I'm glad we communicated and we got it done.
We didn't ask you guys last night about T-Mac's comments that got resurfaced from a couple years ago about he didn't watch film. Is that something you all addressed with him, and were you satisfied with his answer?
I never brought it up. We just met him. We put him on the board. We talked to him. He's really sharp, and we felt like this was a guy that can come in and and learn and do the things we're going to ask him to do. And we ask our receivers to move around quite a bit in different formations and all that, and we felt really confident he could do that. And then just like I think I mentioned it before, but if you just watch his craftsmanship and the way that he goes about the game, he works at it. You don't just that stuff just doesn't happen. The details and the technique and all that. So not really something that played in.
Where do you feel like right now the tight end position is maybe an area that maybe you might have thought about addressing in the draft, or maybe still are? Where do you guys feel tight end is at right now?
I feel good about our group right now. And again, all of these positions, as we go, we have a bunch of picks left. And so every single position, we're going to try to add good players there to challenge the room. The central theme of our whole deal is competition. And when we throw competition at something, you get the best out of everybody. So we're going to try to challenge, as many positions as we can.
Dave, when T-Mac was here today, you got to watch him and Bryce meet up and kind of chit-chat for a while. As a head coach, what is it like to just kind of watch that first interaction and what it's going to mean for your team? Yeah, there's a me to you factor to this sport, when it comes to the pass game. And it is about time on task. It's about throwing, but it's also about chemistry. It's about feeling like you have a connection with somebody, and you kind of just like, I think back to there was that crazy throw that Bryce had to Tommy Tremble up the sideline, like on a 3rd and long, almost like it was designed. They just kind of knew. And it's about just spending time with each other, and his body language said he's going up. I'm going to throw it now. And so I think any little touch that they can have, any little connection that they can have, it finds a way to make itself visible on the field, and you can feel that chemistry, and that's what we hope happens.
Have you guys made a decision on Icky's 5th year yet?
No, we haven't. Once the draft's over, we'll get together and we'll make a decision pretty quickly.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys. Yeah, no problem.